All right. Here we go, guys and gals. And boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, drivers.
And we are back for the Loose Wheel show. I almost said podcast, but I
Can't
saved
start
myself.
off season 3 like that, Andrew. What are we doing? We
Hey, I
practiced for
said
this.
we did not
We
practice
didn't
anything.
practice.
But
we didn't practice anything.
however, I didn't say podcast, so we're off to a decent start. Anyway, Loose Wheel
I
show
plan to derail that very quickly.
season 3, episode number 1. We have the lovely Ethan Ignatowski
Oh, thank you
along
for
with
that.
myself, Andrew Hazlett. Not maybe some might say more lovely, some might say less. We don't
depends
know.
who you ask.
More, less lovely. Well, I don't know.
I value
then we-
both of you as an income source.
And then we have, I don't even know what he just said. I'm not even going to try to process that. Morgan Tremmel, the guest who we've had most often on the show. And we are starting
He's
season
like-
3 with a bang, ladies and gentlemen.
We
He's
start with a
like-
boom.
He's like Nico Hulkenberg super sub.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the type of situation we got going on over here at the Loose Wheel Show. It's great to be back. Feels a little weird to be back. Not gonna lie. This is like I don't know, just like because we did it every Tuesday for an entire semester, and then we had a break, and that felt weird because we weren't doing it anymore. But now it feels weird to start doing it again. But I'm happy that we're doing it again, and yeah, it's gonna be a good season. Lots of stuff coming, and basically how we're going to kind of approach the first few episodes is by getting you all caught up on what happened while we were on our break, around a month long. The smaller news stories, you know,
That's on
we
you
can't
guys.
go
You guys got
over every single thing, but the big news stories from while we were gone, we're going to talk about it, give our thoughts on it, let you know what you need to know. And we're going to start off that process by talking about the Formula One news from the past month or so. And we'll probably get into some IndyCar news as well as the show goes on.
Yeah, so like Ethan said, into the news now.
And now for the news.
The first big piece of F1 news. Perez out, Liam Lawson in at Red Bull. I know Morgan has thoughts on that. I know he's going to go into it, but first I do want to hear Ethan's take on this as he is the regular co-host.
Yeah. I think everyone but Sergio Perez knew that Sergio Perez was going to be kicked out of Red Bull. I think he was quite literally the only person on the planet that knows about F1 that didn't know. I mean, he's headline of an article on Formula1.com. His first time talking about leaving Red Bull since he left Red Bull. This was published yesterday. He said, quote, "I didn't expect it."
Which is wild.
Which is wild because his performances just got worse and worse, and
We were closer. All of you watching or listening at home, you're closer to Sergio Perez than Sergio Perez was to Max Verstappen.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that either.
Statistically, point-wise.
Point-wise, sure.
Point-wise.
Sure.
There's many a thing wrong with the F1 point spread, though.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the thing. Sergio Perez, the car, it just didn't suit him. We know that Sergio Perez, and this has been a theme throughout his career. Certain cars suit him better than others. You know, when he was breaking into the Formula One scene with the Sauber over a decade ago, that car agreed with him, and he was able to bring out some very good performances. So in 2013, McLaren took a shot on him. That car, it didn't suit him, and he he struggled mightily. He goes to Force India, and which becomes Racing Point, and I mean he spent like the better half of a decade there. That team was able to grow around him. The driving style was able to grow around him, his feedback, and he, at the end of his time at Racing Point, was the best midfield driver. And it wasn't something you could really argue about. He was the guy from the midfield who was punching above into the class above. Your top big three, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari from that era. And so when he was essentially kicked out for Sebastian Vettel, and Red Bull offered him the contract, it made a ton of sense. He was the best driver, not on a Big 3 team, and now he was getting his shot at the Big 3 team. The problem was, it was another McLaren situation. The car didn't suit him at all. At certain points, it suited him more than at others. At certain circuits, he was able to bring the most out of the car, and on rare days, but they did happen, he was able to beat Max Verstappen. It's just that those days became less and less until they just didn't happen anymore. And it's not even so much so that he continued to fall off more and more. Like, obviously, that is the main concern. But it's also that Red Bull couldn't afford it anymore. When Sergio was finishing 20 seconds behind Max, but then everyone else was finishing 10 seconds behind Sergio, it's a non-issue. But when Sergio is still finishing 20 seconds or 25 or however many seconds behind Max, but now you have drivers in between, that's the issue. It cost Red Bull a Constructors' Championship, and as the season progressed, the issues became more and more clear, and the writing was really on the wall because Red Bull was very desperate in their actions with RB to find another driver. Daniel Ricciardo, obviously, to start off the year, that didn't work out, but the only reason that he was in RB, it wasn't for him to spend 3 years there and develop as a driver. No, he's a veteran. It was just to see if he still had it to go up to that Red Bull team. Red Bull decided he didn't. Enter Liam Lawson, which takes us really to the next chapter of the story. Sergio Perez, as we know, he got dropped. And to end the season in RB, it was Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda. And quite frankly, Liam wasn't as good as Yuki. I didn't expect him to be as good as Yuki or anything because, not only does Yuki have way more experience in that car, but Liam was coming in the last 6 races of the season, whereas Yuki had already been there the entire year and all that. So I didn't expect Liam to be better, but it was the fact that he wasn't, and yet he was chosen to be the new second driver at Red Bull over Yuki Tsunoda, who has proven himself, gotten better every single year in the Red Bull sister team, and he was passed over for Liam Lawson, which I for the most part can't fathom. I do understand Liam can be kind of molded more to that driving style of the Red Bull in theory if he doesn't get used to something else. But I don't know, what's the point of proving yourself in the Red Bull Junior team for 4 years if they're not even gonna pick you. It's
Time
it's
to move on to greener pastures.
yeah, for Yuki. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really unfortunate for him. For
mean-
Liam, it's a great opportunity. I don't really know what to expect. I think Sergio's confidence was absolutely crushed at the end, and that wasn't helping him at all. I think Liam's going to go in with a lot of confidence. I think he probably will be better than Sergio, but I don't know if he's the answer because he's going to be less experienced than Yuki. He's probably going to make more mistakes than Yuki would. I don't know. That's all speculation, but that's just that seems logical, right? When you compare the two drivers.
I mean, it is. I mean, this is obviously, I'm coming from a bit of a biased perspective as a huge Yuki Tsunoda fan, but it was personally heartbreaking for me. I can't imagine how it was for Yuki himself. You've, gone this season, and proven that you're a good driver and belong in that upper midfield and maybe deserve that chance at Red Bull. And you get passed up by a guy who you outperformed, and you've proven everybody wrong, essentially. They said Nick DeVries was going to be better than you. He wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Ricciardo was not better than you. And Liam Lawson, up until that point, was not better than you. And now you're still sitting in that sister team just waiting, and that must just kill him. And
Yeah.
it's to a point where they're obviously just keeping him on because
The Honda
the Honda pack. And in every way it seems unfathomable to me, because if you're going to move on from Yuki, put him in the car in the Red Bull for a year, let Liam have a full actual year in F1 so he can just get the grasp of it, get a full nice grasp of, F1 and how it works. And then you can, boot Yuki and send him to Aston Martin, which is a likely landing spot for him, or he could go to, another team, or the worst case scenario for me and Yuki fans, and for Yuki, moves on to somewhere else.
I think something that kind of makes that more difficult for Red Bull, and it's one of the things that kind of makes me understand more, and under this circumstance, why they went the way they did, is if they did that and they did replace Yuki with Liam after a year, then, I mean, it does make more sense for Liam to be in this year anyway, get ingrained, embedded with the team before the big regulation changes the year after. So
It's a hard decision.
yeah.
I believe they made the wrong decision. We'll see if that's
It's
true.
just so unfair.
It's just exactly.
And life
That's-
isn't
I
fair,
think that's
yada,
how
yada,
we'll end this
but-
on.
but
Is
still,
that
it's so
it
unfair.
seems unfair for Yuki. It seems unfair for junior drivers in the future, and it just really seems unfair for everybody involved. I think this will hurt Liam personally. I think this hurts Yuki. I think this hurts Red Bull Racing as a whole, including what is now going to be Racing Bulls and Oracle Red Bull Racing. It just hurts everybody involved, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so where does everyone go from here? I mean, obviously Liam's going to be at Red Bull for,
I would presume 2 years or so,
we'll see,
depending on how it goes.
They'll, unless he's just
If you
absolutely horrible, which I don't think he will be. Like, Liam
No.
is talented, like he has skill, but if he is absolutely horrible, like, I'm sure he will be replaced. Red Bull has shown in the past that they're not afraid to do that. But yeah, 2 years there at least, with the regulation change and all that, seems to make sense. Seems to be a fair shot at it. For Sergio Perez,
IMSA.
well, he said in the same article to F1.com that, quote, in the next 6 months, I'll make a decision on what I want for the next step of my career. So we'll see. He's taking some time, I guess, to kind of
Reflect.
You
be with
could
his
say
family.
a sabbatical.
One could say. Except he didn't have any choice in it being a sabbatical, because he got fired.
Well,
That's the loose.
Yeah.
Let go.
Yeah.
We'll say let go.
So,
Relieved of his duties.
there's some loose rumors about
Loose wheels.
Sergio and Cadillac for 2026. I think that Cadillac 2026 also makes sense for Yuki Tsunoda, who's definitely going to want to be moving on after the season, and Red Bull is... The thing is, Red Bull does have 3 drivers in F2, but I don't know if any of them are really like one and done F2 candidates to go into that RB team and replace Yuki. So that's something to watch out for. But either way, this is almost certainly the end of the road for Yuki and the Red Bull family, whether it's Aston Martin, Cadillac, or maybe Alpine seat opens up, which the way that team is going right now wouldn't surprise me at all.
The circus.
I just, what I fear is a bigger probability or possibility than we want to probably give credit for, is that Yuki might not find another seat.
Mm-hmm.
Not due to lack of talent, not due to a lack of backing, just because if you look at the F1 landscape right now, there's not really a lot of openings. You know, Ferrari, they're locked up, not only with Lewis right now, but in future years with Ollie Behrman. Mercedes also locked up. Kimi Antonelli is going to be there for a very long time, one would presume.
Both the drivers' contracts end after this year, which who knows if they'll get extensions, but it's just something to keep an eye out for.
Sure, but
Something
realistically,
to keep a side eye.
Both of those guys are going to be back realistically. McLaren, Piastri's contract does run out at some point in the next couple of years, but I don't remember when exactly.
He'll stay, I think.
And I'm sure he will stay.
If he's going somewhere, if Yuki's going to go somewhere, it's a midfield team, and he's going to be. He might fall the fate of.
But even the midfield teams, or
he might fall the fate of a. Obviously, he was never the caliber of Valtteri Bottas, and I wouldn't say it's the caliber of Nico Hülkenberg, but of those types of drivers who just kind of circle around teams who are just looking for a one-year fill.
I think here's my prediction. I've been saying this for a while, and on the podcast, Ethan knows, is that Yuki's going to go to Aston Martin. He's got that Honda tie.
Yeah.
Either Aston Martin's going to shaft Fernando or Fernando's going to retire. So I do believe Alonso's contract ends after this year, if I'm not mistaken.
The question
2026.
After next year.
So
I think they could say, okay, we're done a year early. I think it's possible.
Fernando's kind of talked
about
weird about whether he wants to stay in F1 or
move on,
whether
retire.
He wants to retire. So that is something to watch out for. I think Aston Martin and Alpine are probably the two most likely teams. Cadillac, I am going to throw them in there, but I think it's more of a long shot. And the other midfield teams, Haas, they're probably happy until Behrman leaves, and that's probably not going to be for 2-3 years. RB, he's done there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm missing a team for sure, but
Yuki's has an issue, and it's an unfortunate issue where he isn't necessarily that type of guy. He's not old enough yet. He hasn't been in F1 for so long where he is a leadership guy that you can pass on to rookies to gain them experience, and that's just not his personality as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's still young. He's not, one of the older generation looking to pass on their knowledge. So he's in a very rough age bracket, especially with new regulations coming on and new teams being created and all the rumors about people coming from IndyCar and everywhere. Is Yuki really an option that you want to explore? I would.
Yeah.
But once again, I'm biased. But I would.
Do we want to
I think we've said about
his teammate for this year though? Because
That's
the
it's
part,
gonna be two Yukis, man, two angry boys.
Yeah.
That's the part.
we
whatever
can't talk
to
about.
this,
I don't know
to this
how
story.
I just didn't add it to the doc, but let's talk about it.
Yeah,
That's some-
Isaac Hadjar, who, as Morgan said, alluded to, basically, if you think that Yuki Tsunoda's radio messages or outbursts are a little out there, you ain't seen nothing yet.
So this is an angry Frenchman. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Very.
Isaac Hadjar is an angry boy. He's also quick, which
Quick angry boy.
Quick
Two
angry
quick angry
boy.
boys, man.
he did end up losing the F2 championship last year to Gabriel Bortoleto. He had a lot of bad luck towards the end of the season. Obviously, that's a factor of racing. You know, he still lost it, but I think that's important to note, you know, evaluating drivers. And, you know, I keep saying, like, what do junior formula results even mean anymore? We don't know, but he's a guy that's kind of flown up through the rankings, 20 years old. He spent 2 seasons in F2, a season in F3. He's not a guy who's like finishing top 3 after being in the series for years and years. That has to count for something. So Isaac Hadjar, I feel like even when we first started this podcast, Andrew, I had like a much better idea of how to like look at upcoming like F2 and F3 drivers. And it feels like so quickly those series, especially F2, have just become unreadable. So we'll see how Isaac Hadjar is. I back him. I think that Yuki is going to pretty easily be the number 1 driver, but
You never
Isaac
know.
Hadjar could have some good performances. We'll see how he adapts to Formula One. We'll see if he's able to keep his temper.
There is a quick possibility. One last thing on Yuki, that RB Red Bull kind of sits on this, and Yuki and his team realistically look at it and go, listen, maybe we do want kind of a mentor-ish guy in one seat of the RB, and maybe that's Yuki. I don't think that's likely, but that is a possibility that I think people are ignoring, including us, and I just thought about that.
Yeah.
And that's something that's possible. I doubt it happens, but it's a
I
possibility.
think Yuki would only do that if
there were
he had
no other,
other
yeah.
options.
This would be a last resort of nobody else wants you.
Yeah.
We still want you.
And it also depends who's an option kind of for that second RB seat in 2026,
Exactly.
assuming that, you know,
Liam's still there in Red Bull.
yeah, and Hadjar is staying at RB as well. I
see.
don't know.
It's all up in the air.
Yeah.
Everything is up in the air in F1 right now, honestly.
'Cause
It's going crazy.
Looking at the Red Bull Junior Drivers Program, in F2, you have Pepe Marti, who was 3rd in Formula 3 last year. His second season, 2 years ago, his second season, he was 14th last year in his first season of F2. Is he able to make a jump? Maybe, maybe not. You have Oliver, I don't know how to say his last name, Gauthier, I don't know, maybe, who finished 7th in F3 last year and then ended the season, got called up at the end of the season to F2. He had a couple of good results at the very end of the year. And then you have Arvid Lindblad. These are some crazy names, I'm telling you. Who finished 4th in Formula 3 last year, his rookie season. And, I mean, that's kind of the most impressive to me so far because he was 4th as a rookie. It's just I don't even know how to. We'll see.
Here's a guy I think that they're going to consider, Paul Aaron.
From outside, I mean, if Alpine, and we'll get into this in a little bit, Alpine seems to be kind of pushing him to the side. So maybe Franco Colapinto even.
We'll see.
Who knows? Anyway, we have a solid kind of 3 pieces of news here. I'm going to lump into one. Franco Colapinto joins Alpine in initial reserve role following Williams' agreement, rumored to be for 5 years. Jack Doohan's contract rumored to be for just 5 races. And Ryo Hirakawa joins F1 team as test and reserve driver, making him their 5th driver on that roster, joining Colapinto and Aaron, and then their 2 regular drivers as well. 3 stories all having to deal with the number 5.
Alpine
It's a clown show.
Alpine's in a little bit of a mess. I mean, this is, first of all, terrible PR for them, honestly. You sign a driver, rumored to be for 5 races, which means you have 0 confidence in him. If that's true, that's terrible PR. You have your reserve driver for a 5-year contract. That doesn't sound great. And then you're basically kind of pushing out a guy who you has lauded as, a part of your team by adding another driver in. It's too many drivers for a midfield team, and especially too many drivers for a midfield team that's literally just getting their footing after a rebuild of sorts.
As someone who has been not a Jack Doohan naysayer,
Let a naysayer know.
As someone who has been a Jack Doohan in like a naysayer, they should be signing him for the full year.
Yeah.
I agree.
You should give the kid a chance.
Yeah.
He might not be the right kid, I think, but give the kid a chance. Good Lord.
Yeah.
If it's true, it's terrible.
It's what to even say, right? Flavio Briatore was brought back into Alpine to kind of lead a steady ship, and it seems like things have only gone crazier. Yeah, Jack Doohan, he sidestepped a question basically asking, is the contract guaranteed for the full year? And then since then, there's been rumors. How many races? We don't know. 5, this, that. Who knows the number? But it might not be for a full year. Then you have Franco Colapinto being committed to for 5 years.
This is what's crazy to me.
And Franco Colapinto, he had a very nice start to his Formula 1 career. But by the time the season was over, and I think reflecting back on it,
he crashed and burned.
He didn't do that great. It was kind of what we were talking about, Andrew, where I was saying, why move to Franco Colapinto off of Logan Sargent? I understand Logan Sargent struggled a lot, but Franco is what makes Franco not as crash prone, coming in as a rookie, even less experience.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first little bit, Franco was proving me wrong. And then
He remembered he's a rookie.
he remembered he's a rookie. Franco showed that on his day, he is lightning fast, but he also showed that he can put the car on the wall with ease. I don't understand why even he would agree to being locked up for 5 years. In Formula One, that is an absurdly long amount of time, and that just doesn't really... that doesn't happen to a guy like Franco Colapinto who's raced like 8 races. I just don't understand that at all. And then Ryo Hirakawa joining Alpine after being one of McLaren's test and reserve drivers. I mean, that's like pushing Paul Aaron to the side even more, and
It doesn't make sense to have so many drivers signed to contracts, and especially a driver that is not in your starting lineup signed to the longest contract you have, I believe. I think.
Yeah, I do think that's right.
And that's ridiculous. If somebody is going to have a 5-year contract, they need to be one of the drivers that is in your race day lineup as expected every day.
Yeah, and that's not a rumor, the 5-year contract. That was confirmed by Colapinto's manager to the Argentinian press.
And here's why I think it's what is going to happen even still is that 5-year contract. I think there's got to be a clause in there somewhere that he's going to be driving in F1 for a good portion of that 5 years, because there's no way that makes sense to be the reserve driver
or
for
maybe
5
a clause
years.
that he can, if he's offered a starting,
or that. And
then if you look at, and the one driver we haven't talked about is the guy who's supposed to be your number one, and if you're Gasly and you look at this, you look at it and you go, what is happening? This is something that I feel like I might need to get out of. Because if I'm Pierre Gasly and I'm in Alpine right now, this does not look like a stable place to be employed by. This is like going to Burger King, and the first thing the manager does after they hire you says, listen, there's 12 other people behind you, and if you do one mess up, they might take your spot. They might take somebody's spot. We don't know what's happening. It just seems like such a chaotic work environment, and I don't want to be in that place.
Yes, but I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because if you're Pierre Gasly, you're also the unequivocal leader of that team. That is yours.
Yeah.
That even if it's a midfield team, that's not something you leave unless you're getting
a big
guaranteed better environment.
I understand that, but I feel like there's a few teams, and I'm gonna throw Cadillac out there, who, depending on where this goes, if this turns out to just be Duhan's there for 5 races and then it's just Colapinto and Gasly, then I think that's probably just a more stable situation. But if this goes in any other direction than that, I begin looking at other offers if I'm Pierre Gasly and seeing if there is a better option out there. And that's something, if you're Alpine, you don't want your guy to be looking at other offers. You want him to be, especially for teams that are in the same area of you or lower. That's kind of my point of view on it.
I still think, and I didn't really talk about this at all except for the episode where we talked about Franco Colapinto replacing Logan Sargent. I said, Colapinto's going to come in, do the however many races it was. Carlos Sainz had that contract for 2025, and Colapinto was going to go back to F2, where he had a good thing going. And now he's not, and I feel like he still needs that
He needs to be an active racer.
experience. Yeah, being an active race car driver. I don't know. Like, obviously, these F1 teams are smarter than we are. Like, is it better for him to be driving in a simulator as opposed to being in an actual car? I don't know, but I think, like, a simulator can. I feel, and again, like, I don't know, but
Maybe
I
Alpine has
feel
some crazy
like
advanced simulator.
I feel like
I doubt it.
wheel to wheel racing experience. Like, I don't think anything can
simulate that.
beat that. Yeah, like because it's just a different mindset. I feel like,
Simulators are good for training, but
it's
for
training
but it's not we're not looking for training here. We're looking for experience, and that's a different thing.
Yeah. So I'm sure even if Duan, has contract for the entire year, I'm sure, Franco's going to get plenty of FP1 sessions and all that stuff. So,
This sucks for Duhan the most out of anybody. I believe.
Mm-hmm.
This puts him under so much pressure at the start of his career. All this media chatter, like, I've been kind of backing Jack Doohan. Well, everyone's was kind of questioning him and putting him down in some ways, and I think that, at some point, it doesn't even really matter how good you are anymore if everyone is just convinced that you're ruined, and that sort of becomes the truth. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and
yeah,
like,
especially as a rookie.
I'm not here trying to say that Jack Doohan's gonna come out and beat Pierre Gasly and light the world on fire, but he's a good enough driver to deserve a entire uninterrupted season, and he might not get that. And Alpine, one thing that is very real is that other drivers will see how Alpine has treated things, how Alpine treated the Gasly and Ocon situation, how they're always cycling team principles. All this,
Are they the worst situation in F1 right now?
I don't.
They're the most unstable team.
Yeah, I don't think they're the worst situation, but I think they're the most unstable. And if you're a driver looking from the outside looking in, that worries you. And I think this is kind of a little bit almost like the Arrow McLaren situation in IndyCar that we talked about, except that, that's, I said towards the end of last season, last semester, whatever you want to call it, that situation has kind of seemed to stabilize. They seem to have their guys in the spots they want them. I can't say the same thing about Alpine because it seems like they got the guy that they want on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that goes. That's basically it for the main.
A couple other things.
For the main driver.
I want to touch on that
Sure.
story. Is
Go for it.
Alpine should be. It should be a group of 5 top tier teams. Alpine should be in that group, but they have been so badly mismanaged compared to all these other teams with this instability, changing, like you said, that they're not there. Maybe they're at worst Aston Martin level. But still, they should be better than where they are because they kept on changing teams. A lot of F1 fans saying, who's this Ryo Hirakawa guy? Never heard of him. He hasn't done F2 or F3. Where is he coming from? Well, he's coming from the WEC, World Endurance Championship. In the 3 years that he's done it, he's finished first, and fourth with his co-drivers in the Toyota. Oh, that does include a Le Mans win. And then in the rest of his career in Super GT, which is the feeder series to Super Formula in Japan, has 1 championship in 3 seconds. And then in Super Formula, he has a 2nd and a 3rd in his career. So this guy is a solid guy who's done a lot in a lot of series.
Yeah,
He
talented driver.
He can wheel.
but he shouldn't be on. There's no reason for him to be on Alpine's Formula One payroll.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is fair.
You could argue he deserves to be on a Formula One payroll.
Yeah,
but
like
not Alpine.
I think that him, being McLaren's test driver, whatever his official role was, that makes sense. There's plenty of teams where, it makes sense, but Alpine, you already
have a bunch of young drivers too.
I forget which move was announced first. I think Hirakawa's move was first, but even then, that you're working to get Franco Colapinto. That's from
Hirakawa's was last, actually.
It was? Okay.
Wow.
Well, then I don't even know what Alpine is doing.
Well, what they're doing is they're sticking their head in a barrel, and they're spinning around and just pointing at random things and hoping one of them works.
Something's gonna stick, right? But yeah, like I said, that's basically it for the main driver news. I mean, there's the kind of cryptid Fernando Alonso retirement talks and
that's a story for
all
another
that.
day.
But this is the main stuff for the grid right now. But that doesn't mean it's the only Formula One news. A lot of people's favorite track, Spa, gets a multi-year F1 extension, but I'm not happy about the way it is going about because
I'm very much agreeing with this.
It's an extension that
Isn't.
at first seems great. 2025 races, they're going to race there. 2026, they're going to race there. 2027, they're going to race there. But then it becomes
Cursed.
an every other year type thing. Spa will not be raced at for 2028, but it will for 2029, and then it's off again 2030, back on for 2031. A track like Spa, not only the history of the Belgium Grand Prix and Spa itself, but just all of it,
the entire life surrounding that track and this race is something that should be done every year. It's not Silverstone, because I believe Silverstone is Silverstone, and
it's not Silverstone, it's not Monaco, it's not that level of history,
but it's close. It's one that deserves to be raced every year.
Yeah, it's one of the only original Formula One tracks, even in its very different. It used to be 20 something miles or whatever. Now it's 4. Even in this very different shape, it is still one of the original F1 tracks, and it's capable of producing
great races.
good and great racing. So it's very disappointing to see. I think that this year's Belgian Grand Prix, even after George Russell getting disqualified, was unfortunate, but as pertaining to the on-track action only, I think it was one of the top races of the season.
I watched that race, and I remember liking that race.
Yeah. And now we're seeing it oh, yeah, it's just, Spa, we'll go there if we feel like it. And I understand that's not how it actually is. There's a political side to Formula One, and this is in that realm. But to the fans, I think this is kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
It feels, Andrew.
If you're a NASCAR fan, this is like getting rid of Darlington. If you're an IndyCar fan, this feels like getting rid of Long Beach. You can't get rid of those tracks. And F1, the FIA, Liberty Media, all you folks, I hear something. I think it's some clucking coming down the road. It is the Chicken Award. First one of the year. Great job. It takes some achievement to get the one where you have a whole month of news. and things are happening.
When Alpine exists.
When Alpine exists, like
I don't know. I might have given it to Alpine
I was-
still.
But at the end of the day, Spa should be there every year. We don't need to be going to your Qatar, your Saudi Arabia, your Azerbaijan,
No, Baku is great. No,
Baku is
no.
fine.
your
No,
UAE, your Bahrain,
Miami.
your Miami every year. We don't need those tracks.
Alpine gets an honorable mention of a cluck.
Ethan can give him the Sir Lancelot
the Sir
Medal of Excellence.
The Sir Lancelot Medal of Excellency and Honor, or whatever I'm calling it. I think I've only said like the first episode where I announced it. Like I said that was the official name, and I think every time since I've kind of butchered it because I didn't write down like what it actually is, and I think that kind of suits the award.
Alpine definitely gets the Morgan Tremmel "I Hate You" award.
Strong
Really?
words.
I'm surprised that wasn't Red Bull.
Yeah.
Red Bull. I can see some, that's more of a depression kind of thing. Alpine's like straight up red hatred of ruining a bunch of young racers.
Yeah. We do have other kind of track
Places.
calendar news. Rwanda.
That could be fine.
The president of Rwanda has been announced, or he announced a bid to host a Formula One race. Obviously, the FIA prize giving ceremony, awards show, whatever they call it. I forget exactly what they call it, but that was in Rwanda this year. And
I did not know that.
there's been this kind of hype towards Rwanda hosting an F1 race in recent history. I think, for the last like 5-ish years, there's been a big push to getting F1 back to the continent of Africa, but it's almost exclusively been talked about in terms of Kailami, which is obviously the former circuit that F2 raced at in South Africa, which is, I believe, owned by
Someone.
I believe he's the CEO of Porsche South Africa, who owns the track, and he's, I don't know if his opinion has changed over the years, but a few years ago he was saying, I will do what I have to do to upgrade the circuit from FIA Grade 2, which it is currently now, to FIA Grade 1 if Formula 1 comes to South Africa. And people for a while were kind of waiting, and then it kind of died down, and now the talks are coming back up, and it's with Rwanda. I think it's awesome.
Here's some fun facts about Rwanda. They have car-free days, which is pretty cool, which is weird, and world-class coffee and tea.
So the drivers can enjoy some coffee and tea.
Sounds like a great place. Maybe they can have the racing on one of the car-free days.
Do they just run around the track, or do they get an exception?
No, they get an exception,
okay.
so that way they're the only cars.
I think what is the best part of this news is that Stefano Domenicali, all the way back in August, when kind of the talks were starting to get, in the eyes of the public, Rwanda wants it to be at a permanent circuit. This isn't a street circuit or anything like that. This would be a permanent facility, which in the world of the tracks like Spa being relegated to part-time duty, and tracks like Miami being, guaranteed for years, it's awesome to see a permanent circuit.
I think most people would agree that permanent circuits are
cool.
better. And
most times I
speaking.
feel like they're better. Yeah.
There's exceptions, but
yeah,
I think for the most part people like.
I think you thought what I was saying about Baku, I was like not serious. Like, that's an amazing street circuit.
I didn't say they should leave Baku for the racing. That's not what I meant by that.
Okay. Fair enough. That is a
Whole
completely
nother
other.
That's a different.
And we're not going to go further
No.
than that.
This is about cars. We talk about cars.
So tying the bow on this story, for now anyway. Africa hosting a Formula One race is just awesome because, it's a world. Everyone loves to be a world category. Finally going to all continents that are inhabited. Sorry,
the Antarctic Grand Prix.
researchers,
But,
yes. The penguins and Arctic researchers are still going to have to wait, but I mean, it would be awesome to have, all the continents
it'd be great.
covered.
You got to get Pirelli developed snow tires. They
Ice
can't
tires.
even have rain tires though. So
Yeah.
might be a couple holes to jump through to that. Now let's talk about.
Well, we're not done with.
Or not.
We're not.
Talking. I thought we were gonna.
Turkey could be back on the calendar for 2026. F1 and Turkey are reportedly in talks. Turkey today. But I would trust Turkey today's insight into what's happening in Turkey on a daily basis. And if they're saying that negotiations are taking place, I'm going to take their word for it.
I would take everything, though, with a grain of salt. Negotiations, a lot of the time, fall through with so many things. Yeah. And this is not something where you should be booking your flight to Rwanda or booking your flight to Turkey for 2028 or whatever. You should be taking it with a grain of salt and hoping that you'll get your nice trip to Rwanda.
I'm in I could say I'm in negotiations to sponsor a race car.
Okay, but you're not.
This
Turkey and F1 actually are in negotiations.
This is just
so there's a
bad
difference
falling through.
in you just straight up lying to our listeners.
Well, I could
These
call
listeners
up
trust us.
people to get sponsorship for the Loose Wheel podcast. I could.
But you're not. That's my point.
Maybe I will just to spite you.
Okay.
Okay, you
So,
know what? Make us money.
back to the actual news. Turkey, it's one of the best tracks that can host an F1 race. If you saw the racing there, the only reason that, the newer generation of F1 fans know Turkey is because of COVID and having to race in Turkey because other tracks, they couldn't race at. Turkey is it's the best Herman Tilke circuit.
It got Lance Stroll his one and only pole.
Yeah,
Does that make it good or bad?
no, that makes it amazing. But it genuinely is just an amazing circuit. That's the first circuit with that kind of quadruple apex that we see at Coda. That's this. Turkey is Coda's dad. Like that's what's happening here.
I think America would have a very strongly worded essay for you about that.
I don't know. That's just my take. As we're wrapping up, only a few minutes left. We got a couple of smaller stories. Mike Crack, Austin Martin, team principal, out with the old, in with the new. Andy Cowell is
Very
the
sad.
new team principal there. AP is reporting that the change was made to to ensure, quote, clarity of leadership and as part of a shift to a flatter structure, whatever that means.
This makes me think that Mike Crack had some issues with Lance Stroll or something of that nature, because he is still involved with the team as far as I'm aware. He got put in a different position,
Did
I
he?
believe. I
Yeah,
believe
he
so.
did.
So I think this was something probably about an issue with Lance Stroll or something like that.
I don't
just
know.
a hazard,
I think
guess.
that's speculation.
It is speculation,
Like, that's
but-
heavy speculation.
But the fact that he's still involved with the team is.
I feel like if he wasn't involved in the team, that would lean more that way. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just to throw something out there.
But who is Andy Cowell? I hear
He's a
the
dude.
voices in my head ask. He's a British engineer. He's been in F1 for a very long time. I mean, he started all the way back when Cosworth was in Formula One. That was kind of his entry into Formula One. He was at Mercedes for a while. He's this guy in the middle of.
I like his glasses.
Yeah,
pretty solid glasses.
This Andrew is a very rare picture of Kevin Magnussen on a podium.
Wow.
I think that was his one podium.
One and only
career.
podium
In
in his
first
debut race.
He looks so young and happy.
So
It's what Haas does to a man, folks.
So that is a change that was made in Aston Martin's structure, and then a change in Liberty Media's structure. The owners of Formula One, as we talked about at the end of our towards the end of our last season, the Liberty Media CEO, whose name I am forgetting right now,
Greg Maffei or something like that.
He stepped down, and is his successor has been named to be Derek Chang, President and Chief Executive Officer. SVG, not Shane Van Gisbergen, Sports Video Group News is calling him a veteran executive across the global media, sports, and entertainment industries.
Sounds like a pretty cool dude.
So,
All
given that description, I would assume that he's qualified. You know, Liberty Media, they seem to know what they're doing. If you're an Atlanta Braves fan, let me know if you think they know what they're doing. Did you know Liberty Media owns the Atlanta Braves?
No.
Did now.
All right, that's the first episode of season 1, episode 3. Ethan, thank you for being here. Morgan, thank you for coming on. Where can the people find you on the internet?
Once again, Morgan Tremmel on Twitter. Don't post much there, but also Morgo_Trems7 on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active. I post a bunch of stuff, Yuki Tsunoda stuff. And then my LinkedIn is also Morgan Tremmel if you want that for some reason.
Where can the people find me, Andrew?
They know where to find you. We have a website about that.
Ethan Ignatowski on
All right.
Twitter.
See y'all next week. Goodbye. Stay tuned for more Blaze programming. And here's Highway Boys by Zach Bryan.
Goodbye.
Bye.
To me, it looked like he actually lost the wheel.
The wheel for Ross Chastain is still and perfect.
Wheel on the track.
Did you leave the wheel loose?
You picked a fine time to leave me loose, wheel.